Hello and welcome to another episode of Sports Scene Season 12, Episode 7. We're tanking through the summer. Still, sports are not here, but we have sports news and sports discussion for you. It's July 15th, 2020, and I am joined with my team once again all across America. Oh, we lost Nathan. He might be coming back soon. There he is. Guys, how are you doing today?
Great. Excited to be back on. I think this is my third or fourth week in a row now, so happy to be back.
Got Nathan on for his first show this week. Lauren's coming back.
I'm a rookie.
It's great to be here.
Well, welcome to your first episode of Sports Scene. It's going to be a wild ride. We got a lot of things to talk about. Biggest news coming last week: Pac-12 only schedule. No out of conference games. USC, how does this affect them? No Bama, no New Mexico, And no, Notre Dame, for the first time since the end of World War II, USC will not be playing Alabama in a college football season, which is just wild. So, guys, first rapid reactions, then let's get into if this helps or hurts USC. So, just how do you feel about this in general first?
Yeah, I mean, I think USC, they win from this, actually, if you look at it, because their Pac-12 schedule, it's all winnable games except for really Oregon, and then ASU is a potential trap team. But other than that, it should be smooth sailing for USC, I think, in the Pac-12 this year. They're really difficult games were the games against Alabama and Notre Dame, which canceling them helps USC's record. And also, if USC has to add a couple of games at the end so the Pac-12 can kind of even things out so that the only teams that USC would have to add would be either Oregon State or Washington State, which are two very winnable games for the Trojans. Whereas you look at the other schools in the Pac-12 South, UCLA, Arizona State, they all have to add teams such as Oregon, Washington, and Stanford, which are the three powerhouses in the North. So really, it's, I think, a clear path to the Pac-12 championship for USC now that it's a Pac-12 only schedule.
I mean, but wouldn't that have been the same thing, regardless of if there was out of conference games? Because you only look at the conference record, right? I mean,
Yeah, I think maybe, but I think one of the factors that has to be added into that is if you go out and play Bama and get, punched in the mouth and take a bad loss against Alabama and maybe a bad loss against Notre Dame, there could be confidence could be knocked and there could be hangovers that bleed into the other Pac-12 games. So I think in terms of everything, this is just ideal for USC. It's basically now a clear cut path to the Pac-12 championship with very few hurdles in the way, because I think Alabama and Notre Dame, those games had the potential to sort of affect the Trojans outside of those games.
yeah, that's fair. I honestly think this actually kind of hurts USC in a way, but I want to hear from Lauren or Nathan first before I go in on that, because I know I'm the lone wolf today with how this hurts USC. Lauren, why don't you let me know how you think this hurts or helps USC?
Um, Ultimately, I think this is going to help USC. I think it gives them a kind of break, especially how Nick was saying if they're going to be playing big teams like Alabama. I think that could put them off to a rough start. Obviously, the last time we played Alabama was not pretty. And I think it would kind of hurt USC to gain momentum and continue forward. I think Pac-12 play will be, as Nick said, smooth sailing for the most part. But I think this is going to give USC that time kind of off and be able to focus on just Pac-12 play. And I think will ultimately help them in the end of the season if it does happen the way that we want it to.
Yeah, the way I kind of see it is this really hurts USC in the sense of, look, they were probably going to not be a college football playoff team at the end of at coming into this year, right? So what's the next best thing, right? A Cotton Bowl, because the Rose Bowl is obviously not in it due to the college football playoffs, whatever. So USC's upper echelon already was go to a Pac-12 championship and then, ideally for them, win it and then go play in that Cotton Bowl and then see what happens there, right? So that was kind of where it was. And I don't see that this affects them any more than it's like, well, the only off chance that they, maybe beat Alabama, which probably not going to happen, right? Or even like play them close, right? Even if you play like a one-score loss and then beat Notre Dame later down the line, I can forgive a week one loss, a close loss to an Alabama team, and say, look at everything they did here. And that kind of gives them a little bit more credibility in this, because you look at the Pac-12 schedule, who are the reliable teams that you looked at, the teams that are going to be good this year? You have Oregon and you have Arizona State, right? And Arizona State's even a toss-up, right? But USC should probably win that game. And then Oregon, they're going to see in the Pac-12 championship anyway, right? So to me, it kind of hurts them in the sense of like, it took away the possibility of going higher.
Yeah.
Obviously, they probably weren't going to go higher than that, but now they don't even have that opportunity, right? And
I actually, kind of going back on what you're saying, I think it's also like kind of like a double-edged sword. Like, yes, that chance of playing higher got taken away, but who's to say? I think I said this like one of my last episodes of Sports Scene, is that I think playing a team like Alabama, who's such a powerhouse, and USC having to go against them, like, who's to say that our players didn't get hurt? And we have quarterbacks who often get injured. Imagine if we go into that first game, Keaton Slovis gets hurt, and then where are we there? Like, where do we go from there? And then you think about like the team morale, I think USC really cares about how they do, and the way they feel about themselves kind of plays out in the way they do in different games. And so I think kind of if they had a horrible game like they did years ago and it was like a total wipeout, I think that would just ultimately cause them to lose their footing for the rest of the season. So I think, especially with everything going on, we didn't get a spring game. We didn't get to see them play through the spring, and now it's just kind of voluntary workouts. It's obviously not at all the same. This is just going to help them for at least the next season to hopefully really take it up a notch the next season for 2022 or 21,
Well, Sam, also
21. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, also, Sam, going off what you said about USC, sort of this removes the ceiling for them. I don't even think that ceiling would have been there to begin with of the Cotton Bowl, because all these conferences are saying we're only doing in-conference games. So who's going to even say bowl season is going to happen? Because let's face it, no one from the same conference plays each other unless they want to do an all SEC college football playoff or an all Pac-12 college football playoff for whatever conference it is. So that's just not going to happen. It's not likely. So I think this season, the highest USC can go anyways is the Pac-12 championship. And so I think what this does is, by making it a Pac-12 only schedule now, USC can just look and say, all right, we're going to devote all of our attention to our opponents every week. There's going to be fewer emotional hangovers because of the big games against Notre Dame, against Alabama, and they can really just set their sights on one goal, on the Pac-12 championship, and put everything towards getting there. Whereas if this were a regular season, they'd have to focus on Bama, then they'd focus on Notre Dame, and then they'd probably have a goal of the Pac-12 championship, and maybe, as you said, a goal of even the Cotton Bowl or beyond. So I think really this kind of funnels everything in and forces USC to focus on one specific goal throughout the season.
Well, one thing I want to acknowledge before we get, I want to hear from Nathan. But one thing I want to acknowledge is the purpose of this is not just to not have teams playing against people that aren't in their conference, right? Obviously, that's a factor in it where you don't want them traveling and spreading it, across country or whatever. But the purpose of that is not true. You look at conferences like even the Pac-12, right? You have teams down in Arizona going all the way up to Washington, right? Those are two very susceptible states right now. And the point is not to limit the travel. The point is to give them enough flexibility to push that season back. We've already seen that they're probably going to delay the start of the season. Fall camp's probably going to start late August, at the earliest, I think. And that's the real thing. So I think if there is a season, which I don't think there will be a bowl season, I think. Nathan, I want to hear your thoughts. How does this help or hurt USC?
Honestly, I think we're sort of thinking too much in the short term here. I think if this were a normal college football season, I think, Clay Helton would obviously be entering the season with his seat as hot as it's ever been. And I think now, heading into 2021, it's going to take some real underperformance from USC for Clay Helton to lose his job this year. I mean, I think, now you don't have the Alabama game, you don't have the Notre Dame game. And I think with a shorter season, a smaller sample size, a lot of factors that are going to impact the way that USC season plays out. I think Clay Helton is on a much longer leash than he would have been if this were a normal, out of conference 12-game full regular college football season. And I think that's only, whether or not you think that means, whether or not Clay Helton being around in 2021 is going to hurt or help USC is sort of, I guess the jury's still out on that. I'm sure. This isn't just going to impact the 2020 season. I think it's also going to impact the next few years. And I think, Clay Helton should be. I mean, obviously, he wants the season to play out as it normally was supposed to. But I think his job security is looking a lot better now that the schedule has been changed up and the season's going to be short this year.
Well, I know there's definitely a lot of USC fans that will complain about that job security from this, because I think more job security for Clay Helton is the last thing a lot of USC fans want right now. Yeah. Obviously, they kind of want him gone, but it brings up a lot of really interesting things. How does this work for recruiting? We'll get on the draft kind of analysis later. I got a spicy hot take for you guys coming at the end of the show, so we can kind of talk about how that's going to be affected by this. But the other thing is, how do you compare teams like this? This is a bigger issue than just USC. This is a bigger issue than just the Pac-12, and especially because the Pac-12 isn't going to produce any CFP teams, right? We can kind of assume that off the gate right now. And how do you judge a team? Because a lot of the times you have to look at these out-of-conference games where it's like, okay, well, we know this Big Ten team played this SEC team, so when this Big Ten team played this other Big Ten team, we can kind of extrapolate from this, okay, they'll probably have a good shot against this team, so, we want to move them up in the rankings, X, Y, and Z. You don't have that anymore. You have a bunch of teams where it might actually play to the Pac-12's benefit because there are only 3 great teams in there that they'll be able to beat down on everyone else, whereas the SEC, has a couple teams towards the top that are, going to be playing each other. I don't know. It's definitely going to play out really weird. It's something we haven't seen before, but I really hope there is a season.
There's going to be a season.
You think?
It's going to happen. I'm speaking it into existence. It's going to happen.
What's your prop on it? What's your prop bet?
I'm saying what I think actually is going to happen. It's going to happen in the spring, but I say 75% chance it happens.
What about?
To put on the season, do we really think the NCAA is going to say something like, yeah, we might make a ton of money, but we really want to keep our student athletes safe and do what's in the best interest of our No, they're not going to do that. They're going to do whatever they can to make their cash. And I think that obviously means putting on a college football season this year.
I mean,
yeah, and I think even more at the smaller level, colleges also need the money. You look, it's been talked about extensively on this show and everywhere else. The majority of athletics budgets come from the football season. So without football, no other sport is going to happen. So I think there really is an emphasis and a need for football to happen this year, whether it is in the fall, like a later date, which is what it's looking like right now, or even delaying it to the spring. It's going to have to happen at some point.
Yeah, you bring up a lot of interesting points there. I know they need to have it, and you have to look at this like a business, but at the end of the day, it's on a university level, right? And that's why we've seen a lot of smaller schools that don't rely on their football teams canceling, saying we're going completely online. There's not going to be a football season. There's not going to be any sports season because the Ivy League they don't get their money from football, right? Whereas a lot of these other schools do, especially a bunch of smaller schools. You look at, I'm thinking like MAC teams. Maybe that's just because I'm from Michigan, I guess. But like Central Michigan already had to cut their track team. Bowling Green had to cut their baseball team. And that was 3 months ago. That was at the start of this whole thing. And now we're talking about this. I mean, you look at Stanford, obviously, I'm not too worried about the whole Stanford thing because they had so much bulk in their athletic program that a lot of these sports aren't even really played competitively at the collegiate level. Yeah. But like men's volleyball, that's one sport that kind of worries me. It's like, okay, this is kind of the start of a major school losing a program which is, nationally known. If you're in the men's volleyball sphere, about Stanford. They're a team that's consistently, decent. So that's what worries me from this.
Yeah, I think it's kind of hard to say, like kind of going back to what Nathan said, we're like thinking about it in the short term, but it's just hard for me to imagine. Like, obviously, we all want a football season whenever it will come, but if they're not allowing even students on campus, I know the protocol for USC athletes is completely different. I really just don't know how, without the threat of COVID being lessened, how they're going to have these games play out. Obviously, USC especially needs that money and needs those funds to come in from football because we all know that's like the major money in the sports at USC. But I think it's too early to say, and I think we just kind of have to wait the next few months and see when that really does happen, because I think it takes only a few players in fall camp getting sick to put everything back on hold.
Yeah, I also think it's a lot easier said than done to just say we'll do a spring season this year. I mean, okay, let's say you put on a spring college football season. Probably ends sometime, May, June, something like that. And then you have a new season starting up again early September. You're only giving them a couple months off. I mean, I don't know if they're even allowed to do something like that. I mean, you have to give them more of an off season than that. So I think I would say it's more likely that they just cancel the season altogether than try to push it to the spring. I just think there are too many logistics that they would need to work out that way. And there's too many things that they would have to work around. And I think, we don't even know if this thing's going to get any better come springtime. So I don't know. I think they're going to try to do whatever they have to put on a season this fall. But I think if it doesn't happen this fall, might be waiting until next fall.
Yeah. One thing I want to point out is you coastal elites, all of you are from California. The spring season, we have this thing called winter in Michigan, and it goes until April. And I've seen snow into May. So, like, that's another thing. Is like, how do you work this as the NCAA, where you have teams in Michigan, in New York, or in cold places, right, where the field is going to be under 2 feet of snow until March? So, like, you don't even know if you can start then, which is something. I want to move on to our next topic. I also know we have some people in chat right now. So, hey, drop your thoughts in chat if you think this is going to help or hurt USC. Obviously, the no Bama game hurts a lot. The no Notre Dame game, fans love that game. But we'll push on to our next topic. Another big news story breaking a couple days ago. Former USC quarterback JT Daniels, he got his transfer waiver to play at Georgia, which is, if you told me at the start of the 2018 season that there wasn't going to be JT Daniels was going to transfer, I would have told you you're insane. I remember I was at the Daily Trojan. This is before I made the switch to Annenberg Media. I was still DT or die. We printed our cover for the newspaper. The first newspaper we had, it was The Hype is Here, and it was JT Daniels. And then the next one, The Hype is Where. I didn't know where it was. It just disappeared. Just so quickly, and now the hype is transferred. So I'm interested to see how that goes. We talked a little bit already about how JT Daniels in Georgia is going to fit in, but now that he has a transfer waiver, let's kind of revisit this. Was Georgia a good decision? Was transferring a good decision?
Yeah, I think transferring JT left the one situation to go to the exact same situation. But I think what he saw, SC, even if the coaching staff hadn't, the fan base adores Keaton Slovis, and the fan base really wrote in Keaton as the starter. And I think the coaching staff, they knew Keaton is going to be the starter. And so JT was thinking about himself, I want to play in the NFL. Where can I go to become an NFL player? And I think Georgia kind of is a fit for him because they really have a question mark at quarterback, but it's going to be a competition. Can he win another competition? And can he actually beat out Jamie Newman this time? Unlike here when he beat Keaton, but then got injured. But I think with JT, what he saw in Georgia was a top program with elite production of NFL caliber talent. And he saw a system where he fits in relatively well and figured, there's an open vacancy at the QB position, and I think he's betting on himself to go into Georgia and to beat out Jamie Newman for the starting position. So I think this is more of JT saying, I'm going to bet on myself. I'm going to make the most of this opportunity, and I'm going to do what I can to make it in the NFL more than anything. And I think Georgia's the right fit for him because it has, once again, the name and the talent that it can produce out of there is second to none for most schools. So I think he really is seeing an opportunity for himself there.
Yeah, the thing that bothers me still about Georgia is he's going from one stacked quarterback. It's not even that stacked of a quarterback room at USC. I mean, you look at Keaton. Keaton's coming off an injury. You can't forget that.
Yeah.
His shoulder's still hurting, and I know this is nothing to judge him off, but they had one spring practice, and he didn't look that great. And I'm not saying that, that wasn't just getting the rust off from not playing for a month or two, but like, if I'm JT, I know Keaton. There's a high chance that Keaton gets hurt again, and God forbid that happens. You obviously never want to wish that on anyone, even as a backup quarterback, right? But like, you're at USC. If Keaton goes down, you are by far the next guy. I can't believe Matt Fink is still on the roster. First of all.
Me either.
It feels like he's been here for 100 million years.
Forever.
It feels like forever. But
yeah.
So
I
just don't understand Georgia. Why Georgia? Why not a team that needs a quarterback right now?
I mean, I think you're making two separate arguments here. One of them is he shouldn't have gone to Georgia, where he might not even win the starting spot. But the first one was that he shouldn't have left USC. Is kind of what it sounds like you're saying. And I think the whole you can fill in for Keaton if he gets hurt. You're definitely the next guy in the quarterback room. Sure, but when you're a 5-star recruit, one of the top quarterback, I think the top quarterback in the country, I think the number one pro style quarterback in the country in the class of 2018. You're not going to sit around at a school where it would be quite the uphill battle for you to win that starting spot, and then hope but also not hope, because you don't want the guy to get hurt. That the guy gets hurt and then wait for your chance to fill in there. What if Keaton doesn't get hurt? What if he does what he did last year? He stays healthy for the entire season. He puts up another near Heisman finalist candidate caliber season. Then you're just wasting another year of college when you could be at a different program where it's even if it's still an uphill battle for you to win that job, like it may be at Georgia. It's certainly more likely than at USC. And I think any school in the nation would take a talent like JT Daniels. And I think, obviously USC wasn't the right fit, but that's not because he, did anything through his own performance to lose that job. I think, he didn't, quite live up to the lofty expectations that USC fans had set for him, but he wasn't terrible. And I think if it weren't for Keaton Slovis, it would be worth giving JT Daniels a couple more shots to see if he can tap into that, 5-star top recruit talent. And I just think any school in the country will take that. And I think Georgia might be the place. I mean, like you said, he can sit in the pocket, become I fully believe JT Daniels can turn himself into a second round draft pick at Georgia. And I think if he wins that job, the sky's the limit for him.
Okay, well, I want to rip into you real quick, but I'm going to preface this with one thing. JT Daniels is a good quarterback. I'm not saying he does not deserve a starting role at a college. However, you brought up the fact that he was a 5-star, the fact that he was a Gatorade National Player of the Year, right? Okay, that was in 2018. Okay, we are past that. He's not a high school quarterback anymore. This is college football now. It's a completely different world. And you know what he did his 1 year at USC? Granted, he did not have a great offensive coordinator. He didn't have a great offensive line. He was put in a bad situation. But there were a lot of things that Keaton did with that same bad offensive line, granted a little bit better, that JT didn't do. Right? And that's what I see here. I never saw that elite factor from JT. Keaton had to play through some bad things. He did not have the best offensive line last year, right? It was better than JT had, but we're looking at how they performed in college, right? It's great to be one thing and be a star at Modern Day, right? But at Modern Day, you have 100 million 5-stars that are playing with you. You're not going to have that every team that you go to. And I think Georgia, fine, if he wants to go there and try and win a competition, great. I just don't know that it makes sense for him. If he wants that starting job, why not go get it and show it? Because what's going to happen if he gets in there that first game and does a JT Daniels again and throws an interception to a guy like that UCLA game where there's no one within 20 yards of the cornerback? He's going to get benched, and you're going to bring in Newman, and he's not going to play again. And what is he going to do? Transfer? Hopefully he gets a waiver again? It just doesn't make sense to me. Why not go to a school that's a lesser of a powerhouse school, but still in a good division, like a Big Ten team or a smaller SEC school, a smaller SEC football school, right? And start and be that guy. And regardless, they're going to have you in there because the next best guy is not close to what you are.
Well, I mean, I guess I'm still slightly confused. Are you saying he should have transferred to a different school, or he shouldn't have transferred at all?
I think USC is a better option.
And I think those are two entirely different points.
Yeah, so what I'm trying to say is USC was a better option than transferring. I don't think USC was a great option. I think it was a fine idea to transfer, but Georgia doesn't make sense. Stay at USC at that point. I think the SEC is going to rip them up.
Kind of weighing in now.
I don't know.
No, I think kind of going on with Nathan said, like, he is very talented and he had every opportunity that he could have had at USC, but I just think, again, what Sam said, he like was a 5-star recruit, but he just didn't do much with it at USC. And I think he is a great quarterback. He is talented, and I think part of him wanted that still big emphasis on the big football school feel that Georgia would have. So he goes to the South. It's still a lot of energy. Everyone knows Georgia football, and I think he felt like this is a different environment. This is a different team. This is a different place. And this is somewhere I can still be a big football quarterback. And I think when we're going back to Keaton, it's like funny to me because when Keaton came in, it was really not that big. Like it wasn't like how the hype around JT, right? And Keaton was what? I think he was like a 3-star quarterback, but then Keaton goes in there. And unfortunately for JT, he just shined. And it just became apparent that not even just with the fan base that Nick was mentioning that is like so big and everyone loves Keaton Slovis, it just became apparent that Keaton was the quarterback for USC. And I don't even know why JT is not the kind of guy who's going to sit around. I think I said this again on like one of my last episodes. He's not going to sit around and wait for someone to get hurt or something to happen for him to have his chance. Like with every right, he has every right to feel that way where he deserves that spot and that chance right now. Unfortunately, he chose a school which he has every chance to pick a school that he feels is best for him. And he picked a school where he's going to have to battle for that quarterback position again, but good for him. And I think there's definitely a chance he can get that spot in Georgia. But I think it all comes down to him still wanting to be about a part of that huge football culture that still gives a vibe kind of like USC would, but obviously in the South. And that's why I think he picks Georgia, because obviously he could play at a number of other schools that do need quarterbacks right now.
I agree with that. We're running out of time on this, Nick. I'll give you one quick last thought. Make it quick.
Yeah, it's just touching off of Lauren and what I was saying earlier is that Georgia was the biggest program with that big of a question mark at quarterback, and JT saying, "Look, I can go in, I can beat out Jamie Newman, I can become the starter at Georgia for the next 3 years, and I can go to the NFL." I don't think any school matches the NFL preparedness that its players have, along with the question mark at quarterback. And so he wanted to get both, and he found both in Georgia. And so this is him betting on himself, saying, I want to be in the NFL, and I'm going to prove it right here, right now, by beating out Jamie Newman at Georgia.
I mean, yeah, I understand where you're coming from, but we gotta dip off college football for a second. We'll come back with the hot take. But some big news. Obviously, there was a large contract handed out like a week ago now to Patrick Mahomes. He got just enough money to live comfortably, $503 million. I think you can I think that's worth it. But now that brings up a lot of questions, namely Dak Prescott, infamous for thinking he's worth absolutely way more than he is. And especially now, he's not going to be the highest paid quarterback now. I can tell you that much. I don't think anyone's going to be past Patrick Mahomes for quite some time. I don't know if there's that much money in circulation. But, guys, what do you think Dak? Do you think Dak is worth what he's demanding? I saw $100 million. What do you think he's worth?
No, I don't think he's worth that at all. You look at Dak, his production, it's come against lesser, inferior opponents. I saw this tweet yesterday. Someone put it out there, the stat that against playoff teams last year, only 6 quarterbacks had more turnovers than touchdowns. And on that list were Jameis Winston, who was playing blind. Also, Mitch Trubisky, who I don't even want to get started there. And then also on that list is Dak Prescott. All he does is beat up on weaker NFC East defenses and opponents and pads his stats there. But you look, when push comes to shove, when you need a play from Dak, it's never going to happen. The Cowboys offense always has been, since Dak's gotten there, and always will be built around Ezekiel Elliott and the offensive line. And Dak, I don't think he fully grasps that. I think he still thinks that he's the focal point of the offense, when really they just need a game manager there, someone who can make enough plays when Zeke is struggling or make enough plays when the game is on the line. And Dak does not possess that it factor, the intangible X factor to, 3rd and long, 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter, down by 6. Dak's not going to get you that conversion. And that's what, if you're paying someone that much money as Dak's asking, they need to be able to do that on a consistent basis.
Hesitating to give Dak more than $20 million per year. And especially when you consider their receiving core. I mean, you could have pretty much anybody step into that job and throw the ball up, and somebody's going to come down with it. So, I mean, why would you waste? I don't know why he thinks he has any leverage in saying that the Cowboys should waste, like, whatever he wants, $40 million, something absurd like that, something double what he probably deserves for a job that, honestly, he's like you said, he's not the focal point of that offense. Pretty much anybody could play quarterback with that receiving core. Zeke is the man. I mean, what does he think? I just don't understand why he thinks he's worth so much more than he is, because he hasn't proven anything. He really is not.
Put a dollar
He's obviously
value on it. If you could give
mil?
him a contract, what would you give him?
18 a year for, I don't know, 6 or 7 years, maybe 5.
That long?
I'd go
maybe
3 years, $25 million for Dak.
3 years, 25.
Yeah, 3
I like
years.
that.
3 years, $25 million a year.
Three's a good. I feel like 3's a good number.
Yeah, 3 is a good number.
Yeah.
Huh.
I feel like you kind of have to prove yourself before you start making all these kinds of demands. And clearly we've all talked about it, that he really hasn't done much. And honestly, I think it's very toxic for the league to have people like this just demanding this kind of money. And it creates a lot of unnecessary drama for the Cowboys team to have these kinds of arguments, especially like so publicly. And I think we're all going to have to see how much he really is worth at the end of the season with how much money he's asking for. And I think if they do pay up